It's been a bit since I actually did a video. So I wanted to make sure that I hopped on here. Got a headache. I've had a headache for the last couple of days. And I don't know if it's because I've been working a lot more on the computer than normal and just focusing. I need glasses. I'm supposed to wear glasses, but I just haven't. And so I don't know if that is what's going on or what, but it sucks. But anyway, it's not really what this video is about. Be sure to join the Discord down in the description box below. I got this email where someone was asking if there will ever be a reprieve in the home buying situation in Tacoma. More specifically, quality. They said quality, but I think they meant quantity as well as affordability. And so this is a good question, but again, I go back to say, what do you mean by affordability? Because what's going to be affordable to me may not be affordable to you, or vice versa. And again, I mentioned that the city has its own formula as to what it looks at as affordability. A lot of the affordability component is for developers who are building multi-family dwellings. So these are going to be your apartment buildings, condo buildings, townhouses, things like that. Most of these, by and large, are going to be your multi-family buildings. Keep in mind, just a few years ago, if you looked at the amount of what's it called? Can't think of it right now. But when you're trying to actually create or build a property, you have to go and get a approval for that. And when you look at the amount of single family dwellings that were actually being sought after a few years back, it was the biggest thing in Tacoma as far as if you look at single family homes and multifamily homes. And now you're seeing a massive reversal where the biggest component to this is multifamily dwellings. And single family homes there's still applications for those that are being sent to the city, but they're not anywhere compared to the multifamily type thing. And to be honest with you, when you start to look at the per capita, the size of the city and the amount of multifamily units that are actually being proposed, it's almost equal to that of Seattle. Again, looking at it in terms of what they're getting approved for and what's getting built and the size of the city. When you look at the two, they're very similar. And so the big thing with those multifamily units are for them to get some sort of a tax exemption or something like that, they have to have so many of their apartments set aside for affordability or affordable homes or affordable units. And so that's going to be based on the poverty level and all of that type of stuff. And what the median household income is down here in Tacoma, which I think is in the 60s. So all of those types of things go into that. And so as long as they provide a certain percentage, and I forget the amount of units set aside for affordable homes, then they're able to apply for these tax abatements, and it lasts for over a decade or longer. And so it's an area of concern for some, because some people feel like this is not fair, and for others it isn't. Now, I do think that these types of agreements should not be in highly desirable areas. Because if that's the case, they're going to basically fill up places like the North End and places to the northwest in the city. So University Place, of course, Tacoma has no control over that, but Ruston, 6th Avenue, all of those places, you'll see a lot of that because, one, the market over there is completely different than over here. The reason why developers love market rate, obviously, is because they can charge whatever they want. And they look at where the building's going to be. I mean, this makes sense, but for some, they may not be thinking about this. They will locate in areas where they can get the highest amount possible. So places like Stadium District, Old Town, different places like that, as long as those areas are capable of handling, meaning that they're zoned and all of that for these multifamily, mid-rises, developers will definitely do it because they can definitely charge what the market is in the Stadium District or what the market is in Ruston. And it's completely different than the market rate for Lincoln District, for example. So, and Lincoln District needs more housing. More housing needs to come over on this side of downtown. So when you look at downtown, it's divided by the interstate. And so there needs to be more brought over from downtown and not just only focused into the downtown core. I do think that downtown should obviously get the bulk of multifamily dwellings, but again, we've talked about this. My opinion would be that the city should require that builders build up more, meaning that if you're going to build in the downtown core and you want these tax breaks, you need to build up higher versus just these little tiny 4 and 5 story buildings. So I think that there should be a height requirement or a floor requirement stating that you have to build at least 10 stories or greater, something like that. Only because the need for housing is so high that it will help kind of keep everything in check. It's never going to lower the price, and it's never going to completely take the steam out of the market because there's a lot of people that are definitely looking. But more specifically to your question about housing, you're probably talking about more single family home type situation. And because there's not a lot of new builds, we're running into that issue of space. We just don't have the space for more single family homes. And so the years of just building single family homes, just like it was no tomorrow, is gone in Tacoma. It's not a reality. We don't have the land for it. So it puts the pressure on prices because obviously land is at a premium. And if you can find land to build a home on, then you really and truly are a step ahead of a lot of people, because somewhere along the line, they're going to have an issue because they can't afford both. When you buy a house, you're getting the land and house and all of that stuff together. And so you can roll that into financing, not a problem. When you buy land, you have to pay for that. And so then you're able to finance the house and do all of what you need to do. So it really does cut out a huge segment of people who are actually wanting to move here. With that said, I don't see that there's ever going to be a point in time where Tacoma will reverse itself, meaning that it will go back to the way it was in the 90s or the early 2000s or anything like that. I think that what you're seeing now is here to stay, and I think you're going to see prices continue to escalate up, obviously, because we're getting a lot more people coming down here and living here, and obviously the amount of homes are just not keeping up. The amount of development is not keeping up. I mean, if you really look at it, I think the growth of the city has caught not only the city by surprise, but even developers from all ranks, from offices. I remember when downtown Tacoma's office capacity was wide open. When we first moved here, there was a lot of vacant space in terms of offices. And now, not so much. Finding an office of good size that's continuous is getting more and more difficult here, to the point of where you couldn't move in a decent big operation here. If you brought in a company that had more than 300 employees at this point in time, it's almost impossible because there's not enough office space down there to handle it. Most of that has been absorbed because of new contracts that have actually been entered into. So a lot of those are gone. You may have a building or two that may come up, like the DeVita building, for example, but it's a tough go. So the whole office market has caught a lot of developers off by surprise. The retail segment has caught developers off by surprise. And I think part of it is they look at downtown and say, well, there's a lot of vacant space. However, it is not the best space. Same thing with office. You can have an office building, but that doesn't mean people are going to move into it. And office buildings are ranked by class A, B, and C. And so when you have a class A office, everyone wants it because it has all the bells and whistles. It's kind of high end. They don't want a C class. And actually, government contracts, and I worked for the federal government at one point, you cannot, in Albuquerque, there was a building that we had that barely met what the federal government required. Barely. The only reason why that building, which was old, was a downtown building. probably 8 or 9 stories. The only reason why that building passed for the federal government was because they had a on-site, um, God, I forget his name or what the term is, but there was a guy that was on site all the time. So he would always, when people come through, he would always be able to greet them. He would know people by face and all of that because we were one of the biggest contracts in that building. The rest of the building was pretty empty. And so that was the only, and also there was a scanner that you would have to go through. Those two things were what made that building pass. But generally, it's not. It has to be a very nice facility. And so Tacoma's running out of those. And so a lot of these office buildings that you may see that are vacant, just like retail spaces, they're vacant because they're not at the standard that retailers want. And so we need more things like what the town center is trying to do because there is no brand new retail being built. The only brand new retail being built downtown as of right now, other than some of these small retail spaces that you see with the mid-rises, is the town center. That's the only one of size that is really being developed downtown. So, and yeah, you can count brewery blocks and things like that, but again, they kind of build to suit. So they literally say, hey, we have 28,000 square feet. Let's try to get a brewery in here. Let's see if we can get this, a restaurant in here. Let's see if we can get that. And they literally go out and headhunt. And so they bring that in. So they're able to build and occupy those spaces quickly. It's not like it's built and it just sits. So it's a very smart approach. But retail development is caught off by surprise. And the same thing goes for residential. And so we're in that critical point where finding what you need is becoming more and more difficult and challenging. Now, with that said, it's never been a better time to be a realtor in Tacoma because they're constantly busy from all segments, from all commercial all the way to residential. Realtors are extremely busy here. We have been on a tear in terms of just industrial warehouses, things like that being occupied. So the industrial side of things, when it comes to retail in different areas, that's been kind of busy. And obviously residential. So all of those areas have been just hammered. But again, going back to the home situation, you're never going to see that day where, there's just going to be a huge amount of homes being developed here. You will see it in Pierce County, no question. And you would have to go outside of the city, obviously, to see that. So you're going to have to go to, as I mentioned, Spanaway. That's one of the areas because as you get further and further away from Tacoma and further into Spanaway, away from some of their commercial area, you have a lot of land that's available. Ording, Puyallup. There's areas where you can definitely go. And some of these very small towns, which are going to probably fill the sting next. And that's one of the big issues is the Tacoma has in my opinion, a great road infrastructure for the size of city that it is. It has a lot of little highways, roads, interstates, things like that to move about the city. It becomes very poor once you start to move away from the city. And so once you start to fan out, there are some of these little small towns which has the land and which probably developers will eventually go to. But one of the reasons why they're not is the lack of good, viable ways of getting there. And right now, the money is being made in Tacoma. They're not really paying much attention to some of these other places. You do have these big master developers that will throw in millions of dollars and develop 30 acres at a time. And that's what's going on in Ording. But as you get closer to Tacoma, it's more of either it's going to be a big project like a 5 or 10 story apartment building, or it's going to be these little small apartment setups that go up. That's what you're going to see. So you'll see the typical traditional, 3-story, 5 or 6 buildings built. You'll see stuff like that. But homes are just not going to be the case. And a lot of times you do have those who are kind of where I once was when it came to owning properties, where they will own a property, make sure their tenants get out, knock the building down, and build 2 houses. So therefore, they're able to rent both. The whole idea of a duplex is not as enticing as it used to be. So a lot of times they will say, look, I can get quite a bit if I build 2 houses, and then I can rent both of those out, or I can sell them and continue to do that process. So, you know, there's a guy I know that has probably 5 or 6 different homes. And if you look at the lot, they're able to really put 2 houses, if not more. There's one where you can put another one on it. It would be kind of strange, but you would have to run a driveway through there. But literally, if he wanted to, he could probably go through and start, and we had talked about that, where, you know, you could really make a lot of money off of these places if you knock down these houses, built new, and sold the houses. And he said that's something that he may consider in the future when he wants to get out of the business completely, because there's such a high demand for it. So I don't see it at any point in time being the way it was when we bought this house, where things were kind of super hot, but they were not crazy like they are today. Today, there's so much going on in Tacoma, and there's really a lot of things that are happening down here. The more that people look away from Seattle, and the more that Tacoma can keep its head level, the more attractive it's going to continue to be. And so that's good for some and bad for others. So I don't know if I answered your question or not. I would say definitely, like I've said many other times, is to get a good realtor. Make sure that they're constantly attending to what you need. Have all your ducks in a row and jump on a property when you can. Excuse me, it's never going to have everything that you want. In this market, you can't really be super picky. You have to, you know, get what you can get, if you know what I mean, because the whole bidding process and the whole, you know, finding the house is part of the struggle. Getting the house is a completely different one. But anyhow, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Be sure to join the Discord down in the description box below. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, and comment. And until next time, I will see you. Take care.